Hi, I'm Nur Olivia Zatira, and today I'm going to explain about Pride and Prejudice. This is a summary and analysis. First of all, Pride and Prejudice is one of the most famous works of English literature, written and published during the Regency period of English literature. So the author is Jane Austen, and the genre is romance, and published at 1813. The setting is somewhere between the late 70s until early 80s. The main character, namely Elizabeth Bennet, Derry, Jane, Charles Bingley, Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. And the protagonist is Elizabeth Bennet, and the antagonists are Mrs. Bennet and also Lady Brooke. The major thematic of elements of this book is overcoming obstacle in love, reputation as a restriction, class and social or academic status, family, breaking gender barriers, pride and integrity. The major thematic elements of this book are overcoming obstacles in love, reputation as a restriction, class and social or economic status, family, breaking gender barriers, pride and insecurity. And the major symbol is Darcy home. So the climax is when Darcy is proposed to Elizabeth. So we're going to move on to the book summary. The novel opens with Mr. and Mrs. Bingley discussing the news that the wealthy young man Charles Bingley has just moved into the area. They hope that he will want to marry one of their five daughters. Mrs. Bennet is especially anxious to see her daughter married to someone of greater wealth than themselves. Mr. Bennet tells her that he will pay a visit to Mr. Bingley. He does so, and arranges for his daughter to attend the ball he is having. At the ball, Mr. Bingley finds himself taken with the eldest daughter, Jane, and dances with her. His friend, Mr. Darcy, is seen as arrogant when he refuses to dance. As the social enhancement in the community continues, Mr. Darcy finds himself charmed by Elizabeth's quick wit and intelligence. Jane and Bingley continue to admire one another, and Jane visits his home, Netherfield. However, she catches an illness in the bad weather on the way there and is forced to stay for some time to recover. Elizabeth walks the entire distance in determination to see her sister and care for her. Elizabeth arrives covered in mud, which annoys Mr. Bingley's sister. Once Jane is well enough to travel, she and Elizabeth return home to find their distant cousin, Mr. Collins, visiting. It is revealed that since the Bennet had no male children, Mr. Collins will be the inheritor of the family's estate. Elizabeth finds Mr. Collins to be rather obnoxious, but he is taken with her. Mrs. Bennet pushes Elizabeth to enter a courtship with Mr. Collins so that the security of their home and property will be secure. He proposed to Elizabeth, but she declines. There are military men in town, and the Bennet sisters become friendly with them. Elizabeth meets a young man named Wickham who tells her that Darcy cheats him out of his inheritance. The Bingleys and Darcy leave for London with Elizabeth's perception of Darcy having just been sourced by the information she learned. News comes out that Elizabeth's best friend has married Mrs. Collins, and Jane finds that it's difficult to get a hold of Mr. Bingley. The marriage prospect for any of the daughters begin to appear bleak. In the spring, Elizabeth visits her friend at hers and Mr. Collins' home and meets Darcy's aunt, Lady Debord. While Elizabeth is there, Darcy pays a visit. They talk and he makes an unexpected proposal. Elizabeth tells him that he is arrogant and refuses. Later, he writes her a letter in which he explained that transpired between himself and Wickham. He also admits the encouraging Bingley to distance himself from Jane, but only because he did not realize their relationship had serious marriage potential. Elizabeth reconsiders her anger and annoyance toward Darcy and returns home. Elizabeth agrees to go on a trip with some family friends and went up at Darcy's estate, Pemberley. The visit, after getting assurance that Darcy is away, she admires the beautiful estate and is taken by the scenery of it all. Without warning, Darcy arrives home and acts pleasantly towards Elizabeth, making no mention of the past proposal. Elizabeth gets notice that her younger sister Lydia has run away with Wickham. They are nowhere to be found, which makes Elizabeth fear that they are living together out of wedlock and will bring disgrace to her family. She quickly returns home to find out that Lydia and Wickham were found and that he has agreed to marry Lydia in exchange for an annual payment. Elizabeth discovered that Darcy paid off Wickham to save her and her family's reputation. Bingley returns to Netherfield and begins courting Jane once more. Darcy visits him and pays a visit to the Bennet, but still does not mention anything about his proposal or any intention to court Elizabeth. Bingley proposes to Jane, which delights the entire family. Lady Deborah shows up and tells Elizabeth that she has heard that Darcy intends to marry Elizabeth. She does not agree and insists the Bennet as a family too far beneath her own. Lady Deborah demands that Elizabeth refuse his proposal, but Elizabeth will not agree to do such thing. She refuses to promise anything that will go against her own chance at happiness. Shortly thereafter, Darcy does propose to Elizabeth and she accepts. This is a critical analysis of women's roles in early 19th century of Britain. The importance of marriage in the lives of Elizabeth Bennet and her sister may be difficult for modern readers to understand. Young women today have a variety of options open to them regarding their future. They can marry, of course, but they can also go to college, follow any career path that may interest them, and live on their own, independent of relatives or chaperones. Young women of Austen's day did not have this advantage. Although the daughter of the middle and upper class could be sent to school, their education there consists more of becoming accomplished than it did of expanding their academic knowledge. And a woman's formal education was limited also because her job opportunities were limited, and vice versa. Society could not convince of a woman entering a profession such as medicine or the law, and therefore did not offer her the chance to do so. If you are unmarried, they would remain dependent upon their relatives, living with or receiving a small income from their fathers, brothers, or other relations who could afford to support them. In Elizabeth's case, she is dependent upon her father while he is living and she is unmarried. But because of the entail and the fact that she has no brother, her situation could become quite desperate when he dies. She and her mother and sister would be forced to rely upon the charity of their relatives such as Mr. and Mrs. Phillips, Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner, and even Mr. Collins. Such a position would be extremely distasteful and humiliating. Another option available to be a gently-bred young woman who needs to support herself would be to take a position as a governess or a lady's companion. Both jobs allowed a woman to earn a living without sacrificing her social position. However, the working conditions of these jobs were often unpleasant and degrading. Governess might be preyed upon by the men in the family for which they work, while ladies' companions such as Miss the Port's companion, Mrs. Jenkinson, might be treated poorly by their employers and given menial tasks to attend to. Any other form of employment a woman could take was considered unacceptable and would most likely irrevocably harm her social standing. An unmarried woman's social standing would also be harmed by her living alone outside of the sphere of her family's influence. If a single woman who had never been married was not living with their family, she should at least living with a suitable chaperone. Therefore, when the Bennet after travel in the Pride and Prejudice, they always stay in the company of a relative or a respectable married woman. So this is what happened there. Thank you very much for watching and for listening to my explanation. Goodbye.